All right, Sergeant, let's start with the timeline from last night.
Okay, so last night, just before 11 p.m., officers were dispatched to the area of 178 and, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Morning Drive, okay. Yes, officers were dispatched to the area of 178 Morning Drive. A caller called in saying that there was a kidnapping type situation that had gone on out there. Officers responded. They observed an adult male that was down on the roadway and had some moderate injuries, as well as in the area nearby him they also recovered a firearm. When they talked to the person out there, as well as a female victim, there was a domestic violence incident that had occurred in an apartment complex in East Bakersfield about 15-20 minutes before this. The victim had been assaulted at that location, as well as forced into a vehicle where the suspect had driven her to this location here. Fabian Prieto was identified as the suspect, age 21. The citizen who had observed this and saw that the female was struggling with this male in the car attempted to intervene. At that point, the suspect ended up at one point exiting his vehicle and pointing the firearm at the person who was attempting to intervene. The person was in fear for their safety and they did not have a firearm. They ended up striking the suspect with their vehicle. After the suspect was down, they called 911 and reported the incident, and officers went out from there. The female victim did have minor injuries. She corroborated what the Good Samaritan said as far as the fact that she'd been kidnapped, she was being assaulted, and that she was being transported against her will. She had some minor injuries here. I believe she's since been looked at by medical aid, but wasn't hospitalized or anything else here. The suspect was taken to the hospital where he's still being treated for injuries. And our investigation is continuing. We're still looking for some witnesses to the original part as far as from where the female was taken from an apartment complex, and trying to see anybody else that witnessed that portion of the assault, and anybody else obviously that saw this incident happen on 178 that may have witnessed parts of this. Please contact the Bakersfield Police Department if you have any further information. Prieto has a warrant for his arrest for a variety of charges, including domestic assault, kidnapping, felon in possession of a firearm, as well as several other firearm charges as far as carrying a concealed weapon in a vehicle and things of that nature, as well as assault with a firearm, 2 counts.
Did he have any priors?
Well, he's a felon, so he does have other priors because he was a felon before this incident. I don't know the specifics of all of his criminal history beyond that.
Do you guys know the relationship between Prieto and the alleged victim?
Based on the domestic assault charge, it does meet one of the requirements as assigned for 273.5, Penal Code Section 275. It's a dating relationship of some kind, either past or present.
How much credit does BPD have to give to this Good Samaritan who, you always say, see something, say something. Very rarely do you have to see something, do something.
No, absolutely. To look at that, to see that something's going on, and to risk and put yourself in that position and intervene is definitely admirable. We always tell people, we want you to do what you're comfortable with. We don't want you to put yourself in a position you're not comfortable with, but when somebody does have the ability and have the confidence to put themselves in that situation there, it's very courageous in a variety of ways to be able to put yourself in the middle of something like that, knowing that you're trying to help this person, you're trying to do what's best for them, but it does potentially put you in a dangerous spot there as well. So it's very admirable that person was able to step in and intervene there, and who knows what could have happened if he hadn't.
Knowing that there were 2 locations, this was kind of a fluid situation. Did the Good Samaritan see this initially at the first location and then follow Prieto and the alleged victim?
No. It's my understanding that he saw them on the roadway. It wasn't until they were later on in the area of 178 that he saw this. The victim had been taken about 5 or 6 miles from where it had originally happened at that point.
So they're both in the vehicle. What does this Good Samaritan say that they saw, and what led up to the point of, I guess, Prieto getting out of his car and pointing his gun at the Good Samaritan?
I can't get into too many specifics of the investigation, but there was a struggle between the victim and the suspect in the vehicle that the Good Samaritan said that they saw, as well as heard the victim crying for help. And as far as prior to this, there was some contact, as you were out there last night, there was some contact between the vehicles, as the Good Samaritan was attempting to make sure that they could stop the other car and try to keep this person from what he believed was a kidnapping occurring, and trying to keep this person from driving off. And at some point in that altercation, the suspect got out and pointed a firearm at the Good Samaritan.
Did the Good Samaritan run his vehicle into their car prior to Prieto getting out of it?
I don't know if it was intentional or not, but there was contact between the 2 vehicles before that, yes.
Okay, and so to clarify, were both vehicles driving along the 178?
At portions of this event, yes.
Okay, and again, to harp on what Jeff said, this is obviously a case where it was a good outcome where the Good Samaritan intervened. Would you caution some Good Samaritans from getting involved in something like this?
Yes, like I said, it's very admirable. It is definitely an intense thing to put yourself in the middle of there. As a law enforcement officer, I understand intervening in intense situations there, and I get that's going on there. We want people to do what they're comfortable with. We're not advocating for, all-out vigilante justice here. We want people to do things, but if you see something that's going wrong, that's putting somebody in danger, and you have the ability to intervene, you're comfortable doing it, sometimes that can mean making a 911 call and following the person. Sometimes somebody might be comfortable intervening physically if they see someone getting assaulted. It's going to depend on that level's comfortable. We want people to overall to do whatever they feel is the right thing and what they're comfortable with there. We don't want them to put themselves in risk if that's not something that they're comfortable doing or not something that they would feel right about there. But it is admirable in the situation that this person was able to step in there and prevent something far worse from happening.
Was Good Samaritan wearing a bulletproof vest?
No.
And that being said, preventing something worse that could have happened, when we're talking about a suspect who is a felon, who was armed, had a gun illegally, who is obviously putting this woman in some sort of temporarily harmful situation, how much, when you are in that position to be a Good Samaritan, how much do you have to weigh how much worse things can get, or does it just have to be, whatever I can do, whatever I'm able to do right now, I gotta just do it?
Oh, I don't know. You'd actually have to save that question for that person that intervened to see as far as what they were thinking and everything else there. I don't know what all consequences they weighed before and after this. All I know is that obviously this ended up as being a good outcome, that this victim was able to stop from being taken, and it was able to minimize the amount of injuries and things that she sustained, and it could have definitely been far worse than this situation here. We don't want a situation where somebody was still injured in this incident, but it does happen from time to time here in these times of conflict, and I'm, from the outcome that we had here, I'm glad that that person was able to intervene and stop this from being something worse.
And just to clarify, because you were saying the Good Samaritan is also a victim, that's the second assault charge because the suspect pointed the gun at him.
Correct. The assault with a firearm would be the suspect pointing the firearm at the Good Samaritan.
Does the Samaritan face any consequences in terms of striking Prieto with his vehicle?
Not at this point. It's been investigated there based on what the facts and circumstances of this case. It's not being looked at as any kind of a criminal charges or case going on there.
So we were out there last night. We saw another vehicle stopped as well, and it looked like a man and woman, younger man and woman, were also being interviewed. The sergeant last night said that there were 4 people involved, but we ourselves saw 6 people. Are those people considered, are they witnesses to
They
this?
could have been witnesses that passed by. The only ones I'm aware of, there was 2 people in the suspect vehicle and 2 people in the Good Samaritan vehicle.
Thanks, sir.
Okay.